I think I didn't do anything wrong, just let things get a little out of hand. It was just a joke, just a little harmless fun, until my husband paused our wedding video and asked if I'd noticed what his best friend was doing. Now I'm holding divorce papers in my hand, stunned that he's actually going through with it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The evening started innocently enough. Julian had been distant lately, working longer hours at his financial analyst job, barely speaking during dinner. Our 7-year-old daughter Ava had picked up on the tension, asking me earlier why Daddy seemed sad all the time. I brushed it off, telling her adults sometimes had complicated feelings. Let's watch our wedding video, I suggested, settling onto our beige sectional sofa in the living room. The open-plan kitchen gleamed behind us, all stainless steel and granite countertops that I'd insisted on during our renovation 3 years ago. It's been ages since we've seen it. Julian looked up from his laptop, his brown eyes tired behind wire-rimmed glasses. At 36, he still had that gentle, scholarly look that had attracted me in college. His dark hair was thinning slightly at the temples now, and he'd gained maybe 10 pounds since our wedding 8 years ago, but he was still handsome in that quiet, dependable way. I don't know, Idalia. I'm pretty swamped with this quarterly report. Come on, I pressed, already reaching for the remote. Ava's asleep. We never spend time together anymore. Just an hour. He sighed, closing the laptop and joining me on the couch. I snuggled against his side, breathing in his familiar scent of coffee and that expensive cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. The video began with our ceremony at St. Mary's Cathedral, all white roses and golden sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Look how young we were, I laughed, watching my 26-year-old self glide down the aisle in my grandmother's vintage dress. And look at your face when you saw me. You were crying. Julian's arm tightened around me slightly. You were beautiful. Are beautiful. We watched in comfortable silence as our younger selves exchanged vows, kissed, and walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. The video transitioned to the reception at the Riverside Country Club, all twinkling lights and elegant table settings. There's Marcus, Julian said quietly as his best friend appeared on screen, raising a champagne flute during his speech. Marcus Bell had been Julian's roommate in graduate school, his groomsman, and one of our closest friends for years. At 35, he was everything Julian wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an easy charm that made everyone gravitate toward him. He gave such a sweet speech, I murmured, remembering how Marcus had made everyone laugh with stories about Julian's awkward dating attempts before meeting me. The video continued, showing our first dance, the cake cutting, and various moments throughout the evening. I was relaxing, thinking this had been exactly what we needed to reconnect, when Julian suddenly grabbed the remote. Wait, he said, pausing the video. Go back a minute. What's wrong? He rewound to a scene showing the dance floor during the reception. Couples swayed to a slow song while others mingled around the edges. The camera had captured me dancing with Marcus while Julian talked to his mother near the head table. Look at this, Julian said, his voice strange and tight. I watched myself laughing at something Marcus was saying, his hands on my waist as we moved to the music. Nothing unusual there. It was traditional for the bride to dance with the groomsmen, but as the camera angle shifted, I saw what had caught Julian's attention. Marcus's left hand had slipped lower, his fingers clearly visible beneath the flowing fabric of my dress's skirt. Not just resting there, but moving, caressing. And I wasn't pulling away. In fact, the expression on my face suggested I was enjoying it. Idalia, Julian's voice was barely above a whisper. Did you notice what he was doing? My heart started pounding, but I forced a laugh. Julian, seriously, you're reading way too much into this. We were just dancing. Everyone was having fun. His hand is under your dress. It's not under my dress. It's just the fabric was flowing around. You know how that dress moved. And even if his hand slipped, so what? It was our wedding day. Everyone was drinking, laughing, celebrating. You're imagining things. Julian stared at the frozen image on our 65-inch television. My face filled the screen, eyes half closed, lips parted slightly, looking nothing like a woman who was uncomfortable with unwanted touching. Look at your face, Idalia. Look at how you're looking at him. I was drunk. We all were. God, Julian, this was 8 years ago. Why are you making such a big deal about this now? He rewound the video again, playing it in slow motion. This time I could see even more clearly how Marcus's thumb traced along my hip, how I leaned into him when he whispered something in my ear, how my own hand rested on his chest longer than necessary. This doesn't look like an accident, Julian said quietly. You're being ridiculous. Marcus is your best friend. He's married to Jenna. This is just how people dance. You're looking for problems where there aren't any. From upstairs, I heard Ava's bedroom door creak open. Mommy, Daddy, why are you talking so loud? Everything's fine, sweetheart, I called back. Go back to bed? Is Daddy mad? Julian's jaw clenched. No, baby, I'm not mad. Go to sleep. We listened to her footsteps padding back to her room and the soft click of her door closing. The silence in our living room felt heavy and oppressive. Julian, look at me. I turned to face him, placing my hand on his arm. You're my husband. I love you. Marcus is just a friend. He's always been just a friend. You're letting your imagination run wild over nothing. But Julian wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at my phone, which had lit up on the coffee table with a new text message. The preview was visible on the lock screen. Marcus Bell. Did he notice? Julian's face went completely white. He stood up slowly, his movements careful and controlled, like a man trying not to explode. Julian, I can explain. No, he said quietly, walking toward the stairs. I don't think you can. He left me sitting alone on the couch, the wedding video still paused on that damning moment, my phone buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from Marcus that I was too afraid to read. 3 days passed in tense silence. Julian went to work, came home, helped Ava with homework, and went to bed without saying more than necessary to me. I tried to bring up the video incident twice, but he just walked away. I was starting to think maybe I could weather this storm when he reminded me about our monthly dinner with friends at Marcello's Bistro. We don't have to go, I said, applying lipstick in our bedroom mirror. If you're not feeling up to it? No, we're going, Julian replied, adjusting his tie. Everything's normal, right? That's what you keep telling me. The edge in his voice made my stomach clench, but I nodded. Of course, everything's fine. Marcello's was our group's regular spot, a cozy Italian place with exposed brick walls and checkered tablecloths. We'd been meeting there monthly for 3 years. Julian and me, Marcus and his wife Jenna, Julian's sister Nina and her husband Dave, and sometimes my sister Beatrice when she was in town. Tonight, everyone was there. Marcus looked uncomfortable when we arrived, avoiding eye contact with Julian and giving me only a brief nod. Jenna, a petite blonde who worked as a pediatric nurse, seemed unusually quiet. Nina, who had Julian's same dark eyes and serious expression, watched me with barely concealed suspicion. Sorry we're late, I said brightly, sliding into the booth next to Beatrice. Traffic was insane. No problem, Dave said, though they'd clearly already ordered drinks. We were just talking about the Hendersons' anniversary party next weekend. Julian sat across from me, next to Nina. The seating arrangement felt deliberate, like battle lines being drawn. Marcus was at the head of the table, Jenna beside him looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. So, Marcus, Nina said with false sweetness, how's work been? Any interesting projects? Marcus ran his hand through his dark hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen countless times. Just the usual IT stuff, nothing too exciting. Must be nice having such a flexible schedule, Nina continued. All those long lunches and after-work drinks. Jenna's head snapped up. What long lunches? An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. I jumped in quickly. Nina, how's the real estate market? Still crazy competitive? But Nina wasn't letting it go. I just meant Marcus seems to have a lot of free time lately. Julian mentioned seeing him around town during business hours. I never said that, Julian said quietly. Didn't you? My mistake. Nina's smile was razor sharp. The server appeared to take our orders, providing a brief respite from the tension. I ordered my usual chicken parmesan and a second glass of wine, hoping the alcohol would calm my nerves. Idalia, Jenna said suddenly, that's a pretty necklace. Is it new? My hand flew to my throat, where a delicate silver chain rested. Marcus had given it to me 2 weeks ago, claiming it was a thank you gift for helping him pick out Jenna's birthday present. The irony wasn't lost on me. This old thing, I've had it forever. Funny, Jenna said, her voice steady but her eyes cold. I could swear I saw one just like it at Tiffany's last week. The salesperson said they just sold one to a man buying it for someone special. The blood drained from my face. Marcus was staring at his beer like it held the secrets of the universe. Julian's expression remained neutral, but I could see the muscle in his jaw twitching. Well, I said with a forced laugh, great minds think alike, I guess. Maybe Julian has a secret admirer who shops at the same places. Maybe, Jenna said. Or maybe someone's husband isn't the one buying jewelry for his wife. Jenna, Marcus said sharply. That's enough. Is it? because I'm getting really tired of being the only one at this table who doesn't seem to know what's going on. Beatrice, bless her, tried to intervene. Hey, let's talk about something else. Did anyone see that new Netflix series everyone's raving about? But the damage was done. The entire table was looking at me now, waiting for an explanation I couldn't give. Julian sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table, watching me with those quiet brown eyes that had once looked at me with such love and now seemed to see right through me. You know what? I said, standing up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and be attacked. Julian, if you're ready to go, I'd like to leave. Sit down, Idalia, Julian said calmly. We're not done here. I said I want to leave. And I said sit down. The authority in his voice shocked me. Julian never spoke to me that way, never commanded or demanded. He was always so gentle, so accommodating. Everyone at the table was staring now, including other diners who'd noticed the commotion. I sat down, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. Now, Julian said, his voice still calm but carrying an undertone I'd never heard before. Why don't you tell everyone where you really got that necklace? Julian, please don't do this here. Do what? Ask my wife to tell the truth? That seems reasonable. Marcus finally looked up. Look, man, maybe we should... You should shut up, Julian said without even glancing at his former best friend. You've said enough already. The silence stretched out painfully. Other diners were definitely watching now, some not even pretending to look away. I could feel tears building behind my eyes, but I refused to cry in public. The necklace was a gift, I said finally. From a friend. It doesn't mean anything. What kind of friend? Nina asked. Just a friend from work. Male or female? Julian asked. I hesitated too long. Does it matter? It does to me. Jenna stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this anymore. Marcus, we're leaving, now. Jenna, wait. Now, Marcus, or I'm leaving without you. They left, Jenna walking quickly toward the exit while Marcus hurried after her, throwing apologetic glances over his shoulder. Dave mumbled something about checking on the babysitter and pulled Nina away, leaving just Julian, Beatrice, and me at the table. Well, Beatrice said with forced lightness, that was dramatic. Julian, I think you owe my sister an apology. Whatever's going on between you two, this isn't the place to hash it out. Julian finally looked directly at me. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes made my blood run cold. You're right, Beatrice. This isn't the place. He stood up and placed a $20 bill on the table. Idalia, we need to talk when we get home. And this time, I want the truth. He walked away without waiting for my response, leaving me sitting there with my sister while the entire restaurant whispered about the scene they'd just witnessed. What the hell was that about? Beatrice hissed. What's going on with you and Julian? But I couldn't answer her. All I could think about was the look in my husband's eyes and the terrible certainty that my carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. The next day at work, I could barely concentrate. As an HR assistant at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm, I was supposed to be processing employee evaluations, but I kept staring at my computer screen without seeing the words. The confrontation at Marcello's played on repeat in my mind, along with the tense car ride home and Julian's ominous promise that we'd talk tomorrow. By lunch, I was desperate to vent to someone who would take my side. I found Beatrice in the break room of her marketing company, picking at a salad while scrolling through her phone. Thank God you're free, I said, sliding into the chair across from her. I need to talk to someone sane. Beatrice looked up, her green eyes, so similar to mine, filled with concern. At 31, she was 3 years younger than me, but had always been the more dramatic one. Her auburn hair was styled in a trendy bob, and she wore the kind of bold jewelry that would look ridiculous on me but somehow worked on her. What's going on? Julian seemed really upset last night. He's being completely unreasonable, I said, launching into my carefully edited version of events. He found this old wedding video, and he's convinced that Marcus was, I don't know, hitting on me or something. It's insane. Marcus? Julian's best friend Marcus? Yes, and now Julian's acting like I had an affair or something when literally nothing happened. We danced at my wedding. That's it. But Julian's making it into this huge thing, and now he's got everyone else suspicious too. Beatrice frowned. What about the necklace thing? Jenna seemed pretty upset about that. I waved dismissively. That's just Jenna being paranoid. Marcus helped me pick out a birthday gift for Julian last month, and I helped him with something for Jenna. It's called being friends, but apparently Julian can't handle his wife having male friends. That doesn't sound like Julian. He's always been pretty secure. Well, maybe he's going through a midlife crisis or something. All I know is that he's making my life miserable over nothing. He barely spoke to me last night, and this morning he left for work without even saying goodbye. A colleague from my office, Sandra, walked into the break room and gave me a strange look before hurrying to the coffee machine. I lowered my voice. The worst part is how he humiliated me in front of everyone last night, making me look like some kind of cheater when I haven't done anything wrong. Idalia, Beatrice said carefully, you're sure nothing happened with Marcus? I mean, I've seen how he looks at you sometimes. What's that supposed to mean? Just, he's always been a little flirty, even with Jenna right there, and you two do spend a lot of time texting. I felt a flash of anger. I can't believe you're taking Julian's side, too. Marcus and I are friends. We text about normal stuff, work, family, whatever. Julian's being paranoid and controlling, and instead of supporting me, everyone's acting like I'm the villain. I'm not taking anyone's side, Beatrice said defensively. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. Sandra finished making her coffee and left, but not before glancing at us again. I had the uncomfortable feeling she'd been listening to our conversation. Look, I said, Julian's always been a little insecure. You know how quiet and sensitive he is. I think he's intimidated by Marcus. Marcus is more outgoing, more confident, and maybe Julian's feeling threatened because he knows I find those qualities attractive. Idalia, I'm not saying I would ever cheat on my husband, but is it a crime to enjoy talking to someone who actually pays attention to me? Julian's been so distant lately, so wrapped up in work. Marcus actually listens when I talk. He makes me laugh. He notices when I get my hair done or wear something new. Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded, but I was too deep into my justifications to stop. Julian used to be like that too when we were dating, but after we got married, especially after Ava was born, he changed. He became the serious, boring person who only talks about spreadsheets and retirement planning. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to an accountant instead of a man. Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. Have you told Julian how you feel? About him being distant? I've tried, but he just doesn't get it. He thinks providing for us financially is enough. He doesn't understand that I need emotional connection too. So you get that from Marcus? The question hung in the air between us. I felt my cheeks flush. We're friends, Beatrice. That's all. And if Julian can't handle that, maybe the problem is with him, not me. When I got home that evening, Julian was in his study with the door closed. I could hear him on the phone, speaking in low, serious tones. Ava was at the kitchen table doing homework, her dark hair falling across her face as she concentrated on her math problems. Hi, sweetheart, I said, kissing the top of her head. How was school? Okay, I guess. She didn't look up from her worksheet. Daddy picked me up today instead of you. I had to work late. Did you have fun with Daddy? She shrugged. He was quiet. He's been quiet a lot lately. Are you and Daddy fighting? The direct question caught me off guard. Why would you ask that? Because you don't talk to each other anymore. And last night Daddy slept in the guest room. My heart clenched. I'd hoped she hadn't noticed that Julian had moved out of our bedroom after we got home from the restaurant. Sometimes grown-ups need space to think about things, I said carefully. It doesn't mean we don't love each other or you. Emma's parents got divorced last year, Ava said matter-of-factly. First they stopped talking to each other, then her dad moved to the guest room, then he moved out completely. Daddy and I aren't getting divorced, honey. We're just working through some stuff. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Julian's behavior was so unlike him, the coldness, the distance, the way he'd confronted me in public. It scared me more than I wanted to admit. Later, after Ava was in bed, I found Julian's laptop open on the kitchen counter. He'd gone upstairs to shower, and curiosity got the better of me. The screen showed a document titled simply Timeline. My blood ran cold as I read, March 15th. Idalia comes home late from work dinner. Smells like men's cologne, not her usual perfume. March 22nd, phone buzzing with texts during dinner. She says it's her sister, but quickly puts phone away April through. New necklace appears. She claims she's had it forever, but I've never seen it. April 10th, Marcus mentions inside joke that Idalia apparently told him about our private conversation April 18th. Find receipt for hotel bar in Idalia's purse. She was supposed to be at work conference. The list went on, documenting months of small inconsistencies and lies I'd thought Julian hadn't noticed. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through pages of meticulous notes, complete with dates, times, and photographic evidence. At the bottom was a new entry, April 25th, wedding video review, Marcus's inappropriate touching, Idalia's receptive body language, immediate text from Marcus asking if I noticed I heard Julian's footsteps on the stairs and quickly closed the laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. When he walked into the kitchen, his hair damp from the shower, He looked at me with those quiet brown eyes that I now realized had been watching and cataloging my deceptions for months. Find anything interesting? He asked calmly. I opened my mouth to deny it, to lie again, but something in his expression stopped me. For the first time since this whole thing started, I realized that my gentle, trusting husband might be several steps ahead of me, and that terrified me more than anything. That night, I lay alone in our king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling while Julian remained in the guest room down the hall. Every creak of the house settling made me jump. Every car passing outside made me wonder if it was Marcus driving by to check on me. The text messages on my phone had been relentless since the restaurant incident. Marcus, we need to talk. Marcus, Jenna's asking questions. Marcus, call me Marcus. Idalia, please. I'd finally turned my phone off, but sleep wouldn't come. Julian's timeline kept running through my mind. How long had he been watching me so carefully? How many of my lies had he documented that I didn't even remember telling? The next morning, Julian was already gone when I woke up. No note, no coffee made, no sign he'd been in the kitchen at all. Ava was unusually quiet during breakfast, pushing her cereal around in the bowl without eating. Daddy left really early, she said finally. I heard him on the phone in his office at like 6 a.m. He probably had an early meeting. On Saturday? I didn't have an answer for that. Julian never worked weekends unless it was absolutely necessary, and he certainly never took calls that early on a Saturday morning. My phone rang as I was loading the dishwasher. Margaret, Julian's mother, never called me directly unless something was wrong. Hello, Margaret. Idalia. Her voice was colder than usual, which was saying something. Margaret had never warmed to me, though she'd been polite enough over the years. I wanted to let you know that Julian and Ava will be having dinner with me tomorrow night. Oh, he didn't mention that to me. I'm sure he has a lot on his mind lately. The implication was clear. Margaret, if Julian's upset about something, I'm sure we can work it out. Married couples go through rough patches. Do they? I wouldn't know. Harold and I were married 42 years, and he never once gave me reason to doubt his faithfulness. The words hit like a slap. I don't know what Julian's told you, but he hasn't told me anything, dear. He didn't need to. A mother knows when her son is hurting. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing in my pristine kitchen feeling like the walls were closing in. The day dragged on endlessly. Julian came home around noon, but only to pick up Ava for some father-daughter activity he'd apparently planned without consulting me. They left without saying where they were going or when they'd be back. I spent the afternoon cleaning obsessively, reorganizing closets that didn't need organizing, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied, but every task reminded me of the life Julian and I had built together. The photos from our honeymoon in Italy, Ava's baby pictures, the throw pillows I'd bought for the couch where we used to watch movies together on Friday nights. When had we stopped doing that? When had we become two strangers sharing a house instead of partners sharing a life? They returned around 6, Ava chattering excitedly about their trip to the Science Museum while Julian remained silent. He helped her with her bath and bedtime routine, then disappeared into his study again. I waited until I was sure Ava was asleep before knocking on his door. Come in. He was sitting behind his desk, papers spread out in front of him. Legal documents, I realized with a chill. He looked up at me with those patient brown eyes that had once made me feel so loved and now made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. We need to talk, I said. I agree. I perched on the edge of the chair across from his desk, suddenly feeling like I was in a job interview. Julian, I know you're upset, and I understand why, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling or take a vacation or... Are you in love with him? The question stopped me cold. What? Marcus, are you in love with him? No. Julian, how can you even ask me that? Because I've been watching you for months, Idalia. I've seen how you light up when he texts you. I've seen how you dress when you know he'll be somewhere. I've seen how you look at him when you think no one's watching. You're imagining things. Am I? He opened a folder and pulled out a photograph. It was from Nina's birthday party 2 months ago, taken by someone's phone and later posted on social media. In it, Marcus and I were standing by the bar, his hand on my lower back, both of us laughing at something. But it was the expression on my face that made my stomach drop. I was looking at him like he was the most fascinating person in the world. This is one picture, taken out of context. There are 17 more. He spread them across the desk like a dealer laying out cards, all showing the same thing. You, looking at my best friend like you're falling in love with him. I stared at the photos, seeing myself through Julian's eyes for the first time. In every single one, my body language was unmistakable. leaning into Marcus, touching his arm, gazing up at him with obvious adoration. "It's not what you think," I whispered. "Then tell me what it is." I opened my mouth, but no words came. How could I explain that Marcus made me feel beautiful and desired in a way Julian hadn't for years? How could I admit that I looked forward to his texts more than conversations with my own husband? How could I confess that sometimes, when Marcus looked at me with those knowing eyes, I forgot I was married at all? "I never slept with him," I said finally. "That's not what I asked." Julian stood up and walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of me. For a moment, I thought he might touch me, might pull me into his arms and tell me we could work through this. Instead, he handed me a business card. "I've made an appointment for us to see a mediator," he said quietly. "Tuesday at 2:00. "A mediator? Julian, that's not necessary. We can handle this ourselves." "Can we? Because I don't think we can. I don't think we have been for a long time." "What's that supposed to mean?" He sat back down, suddenly looking older than his 36 years. "When's the last time you asked me about my day? Really asked, not just going through the motions?" The question caught me off guard. We talk all the time." "When's the last time you initiated any kind of physical affection? A kiss that wasn't a quick pet goodbye, holding my hand? Anything?" I couldn't remember. "You haven't exactly been affectionate either." "When's the last time you suggested we do something together, just the two of us? A date night, a weekend away, even just watching a movie?" The silence stretched between us as I struggled to find an answer. The truth was, I'd been so focused on the excitement of my emotional connection with Marcus that I'd stopped trying to connect with Julian at all. "I've been busy," I said weakly. "So have I. But I still notice when you get your hair cut. I still remember your favorite coffee order. I still know that you hate it when people chew with their mouths open and that you cry at commercials with dogs in them." Tears started rolling down my cheeks. "Julian, I love you, Idalia. I've loved you since we were 22 years old. But somewhere along the way, you stopped loving me back. And I can't keep pretending that's okay. That's not true. I do love you. Do you? Or do you love the security I provide? The house, the stability, the respectability of being married to a good man who pays the bills and doesn't cause drama?" His words cut deep because they were partially true. I had grown comfortable with Julian's steadiness, his reliability, but comfort wasn't the same as passion, and passion was what Marcus offered. "I want to save our marriage," I said, though even as I spoke, I wasn't sure if it was true. "Then you need to decide what you want more, the excitement of whatever you have with Marcus or the life we've built together, because you can't have both." He picked up his papers and headed for the door. "The mediation appointment is Tuesday at 2. If you decide you want to fight for us, be there. If you don't—" He shrugged. "Then I guess we'll know where we stand." After he left, I sat alone in his study, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal and the ruins of my marriage. My phone buzzed with another text from Marcus, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel excited to read it. Instead, I felt empty. Tuesday arrived with unseasonable rain, the kind of dreary weather that seemed to match my mood perfectly. I'd spent the weekend in a haze, going through the motions of normal life while internally preparing for what felt like the beginning of the end. Julian had been civil but distant, speaking to me only when necessary and sleeping in the guest room. Ava had picked up on the tension, becoming clingy and asking repeatedly if everything was okay. I'd assured her it was, but my 7-year-old was too smart to believe my lies. The mediation office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel that reflected the gray sky. I arrived 10 minutes early, hoping to talk to Julian before we went in, but he was already there, sitting in the waiting area with a leather portfolio on his lap. "Hi," I said, taking the chair next to him. He nodded politely. "Idalia." We sat in silence until a woman in her 50s emerged from an office down the hall. She was professionally dressed, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind but serious eyes behind reading glasses. "Mr. and Mrs. Hart, I'm Susan Chen, your mediator. Please, come in." Her office was designed to be calming. Soft colors, comfortable chairs, a small table with tissues and water bottles. But nothing could calm the anxiety churning in my stomach as we took our seats across from each other. "Before we begin," Susan said, settling behind her desk, "I want to explain my role here. I'm not a judge or arbitrator. I'm here to facilitate communication and help you both reach agreements that work for your family. Everything discussed here is confidential, and my goal is to help you find solutions that prioritize your daughter's well-being." She looked between us. "Julian, you initiated this process. Would you like to start by explaining your concerns?" Julian opened his portfolio and pulled out a thick folder. I have reason to believe my wife has been having an emotional affair with my former best friend, Marcus Bell. I've documented evidence over the past several months. Emotional affair? I interrupted. Julian, that's not... Please, Susan said gently. Let him finish. You'll have your turn to respond. Julian spread photos across the table, the same ones he'd shown me in his study, plus others I hadn't seen. These were taken at various social gatherings over the past 6 months. As you can see, my wife's body language toward Marcus is consistently intimate and flirtatious. Susan examined the photos carefully. Even I had to admit they looked damning when viewed together like this. I also have text message records, Julian continued, pulling out printed pages. Idalia has been communicating with Marcus multiple times daily, often deleting the conversations afterward. My heart stopped. How did you get my text messages? We share a phone plan. The records are available online. His voice was matter-of-fact, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. Would you like me to read some of them aloud? That's not necessary, Susan said quickly. Idalia, how do you respond to these allegations? I felt trapped, exposed. The text messages contained nothing explicitly sexual, but they were intimate in a way that crossed marital boundaries. Complaints about Julian, inside jokes with Marcus, late-night conversations about our feelings and desires. Marcus and I are friends, I said weakly. Yes, we text each other, but that doesn't mean I'm having an affair. Julian pulled out another document. This is a credit card statement showing charges at the Riverside Hotel Bar on March 18th, April 2nd, and April 15th. Idalia told me she was working late all 3 nights. I stared at the charges, remembering those afternoons when Marcus and I had met for drinks after work. Nothing physical had happened. We just talked, flirted, enjoyed each other's company. But I couldn't deny the deception. I occasionally meet friends for drinks after work, I said. That's not illegal. But lying about it is a problem in a marriage, Susan observed. Julian, is there more? He nodded, producing what looked like bank statements. Idalia has been spending money on new clothes, jewelry, and personal care services, things she typically wouldn't purchase without discussing it with me first. The timing coincides with her increased contact with Marcus. It was true. I'd been getting my hair done more often, buying new outfits, treating myself to manicures and facials. I'd told myself I was just taking better care of myself. But the real reason was that I wanted to look good for Marcus. There's also this, Julian said, placing a small digital recorder on the table. A conversation I recorded yesterday. You recorded me? I was shocked. Julian had never been sneaky or underhanded in all the years I'd known him. I recorded a phone conversation between Marcus and myself, he corrected, with his knowledge and consent. He pressed play, and Marcus's voice filled the room, tinny but clear through the small speaker. Look, man, I know this is awkward, but nothing physical happened between Idalia and me. But something emotional did happen. Yeah, maybe. She's been unhappy, Julian. She feels like you don't appreciate her anymore. So you decided to appreciate her instead? It wasn't like that. It just happened. We started talking more, and she's funny and smart and married to your best friend. I know it was wrong, but she's the one who initiated most of it, the texting, the meetings, all of it. I felt sick listening to Marcus throw me under the bus to save himself. But what made it worse was that he wasn't entirely wrong. I had been the one to suggest most of our meetings, to text him first, to seek out his attention and validation. Julian stopped the recording. Marcus also admitted that Idalia has been sharing intimate details about our marriage, our finances, and our personal life with him. He knows things about our relationship that no one outside our marriage should know. Susan was taking notes, her expression neutral but focused. Idalia, how do you respond to what we've heard? I felt tears building behind my eyes. I never meant for any of this to happen. Marcus and I, we're just friends. Yes, maybe I've been spending too much time talking to him, but I never cheated on my husband. Emotional infidelity can be just as damaging as physical infidelity, Susan said gently. It sounds like you've been meeting emotional needs with Marcus that should have been met within your marriage. But Julian's been so distant lately. He works all the time. He never wants to do anything fun. He doesn't pay attention to me anymore. Marcus actually listens when I talk. He makes me feel interesting and attractive. So instead of addressing those issues with your husband, you sought validation from another man, Susan summarized. When she put it like that, it sounded pathetic and selfish. I didn't think of it that way. Julian leaned forward. Idalia, I've been distant because I've been watching my wife fall in love with my best friend. I've been working longer hours because coming home and pretending everything was normal was killing me. I stopped trying to connect with you because every time I did, you seemed annoyed or distracted. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time you put your phone away during dinner? When's the last time you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? When's the last time you initiated any kind of intimacy between us? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. The truth was, I'd been so caught up in the excitement of my connection with Marcus that I'd neglected my husband completely. Susan looked between us. It sounds like there were problems in the marriage that contributed to this situation, but Idalia, your response to those problems was to seek comfort outside the marriage rather than address them directly with Julian. So what happens now? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Julian closed his portfolio. I want a separation. I've already consulted with an attorney about custody arrangements for Ava. I'm willing to work out a fair division of assets, but I can't continue living like this. Julian, please. We can go to counseling. I'll stop talking to Marcus. I'll do whatever it takes. Will you? He looked at me with those patient brown eyes. Because your phone has been buzzing with messages this entire meeting, and unless I'm mistaken, they're from him. I looked down at my phone, which was indeed lighting up with notifications. Marcus, asking where I was, if I was okay, when we could talk. Even in the middle of my marriage falling apart, he was still trying to pull my attention away from my husband. With shaking hands, I turned the phone off completely, but it was too late. Julian had already stood up, shaking Susan's hand and scheduling a follow-up meeting to discuss the practical details of our separation. As I sat there in that calm, professional office, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal and the ruins of my marriage, I realized that my choices had consequences I'd never considered, and now it was too late to take any of them back. 6 weeks later, I sat in family court wearing my most conservative dress and trying to look like the devoted mother I claimed to be. My attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Wells, had coached me extensively on what to say and how to present myself, but I could feel the case slipping away from me. Julian sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, looking calm and composed in a navy suit. He'd lost weight during our separation, and there were new lines around his eyes, but he carried himself with a dignity that made me remember why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. Julian moved out. Temp custody, him most time, me scraps. Ava cries nightly, asks for daddy. Social fallout, Nina blames me, sides with Julian. Marcus Jenna divorcing, my affair the spark. Marcus pushes post-separation. I ghost him. Court, Julian's lawyer. Primary caregiver proof, my absences, lies, hotel meet last week. Ava's counselor notes, mommy always on phone. Her drawings, me isolated, phone in hand, Ava crying. Judge, can you put Ava first? I choke. Can't promise. Ruling, Julian primary. Me, supervised Saturdays 10-4, parenting class, therapy. Goodbye and lot, Ava clings. Julian, hope you find what you're looking for. Drives off with her. Marcus texts for drinks. Delete. Truth won. I lost. Selfishness sentenced me.